Hello friends, long time no see. Let's create an epic, shall we? Kira, Althea, and Jacob are living out ordinary lives until they find themselves drawn into the warring world of Synterra. Suddenly, the concerns of finding a job, sorting out their romantic relationships, and settling on a university major seem very small. Synterra is a world the trio could only dream of in their wildest fantasies, and now it's their job to defend it. If this sounds familiar, it's because I've chatted about this novel quite a bit on my channel over the years. This is the notorious Synterra, which I have been working on since I was 13 years old. So, with my previously announced plans for videos thwarted for the time being, I thought we'd focus on something else I'm passionate about, and hopefully it'll help you out as well. In this series, you are going to come along with me through the process of character creation, world building, editing, and just diving really deep into the world of Synterra. The theme of this first episode? Backstory. Stories can be born from the strangest places. Sometimes we have a dream, and something in that dream sticks with us until the next morning so strong that we can't get it out of our head and need to turn it into something more tangible. Sometimes we're walking down a rainy street and witness someone walking down that same rainy street with a cat tucked into their raincoat, and we can't help but wonder, where have they just come from? Where are they going? And a story is born. Well, the origin of Synterra was just as random and unexpected. I've been a visual and literary artist my entire life. When I was a kid, I brought a backpack with me everywhere full of art supplies because I couldn't stand to go 1 minute without working on my projects. This actually went on quite a bit longer than it probably should have, up to the point where at 16 I would be on a couch on my laptop writing at family dinners. Sorry, Mom. And I mean, I'm still the same, just a bit more polite about it. All this to say, I was drawing and writing a lot, and my drawings weren't always very planned out. A lot of it was inspired by the art of others. Sometimes I traced, I was learning. So one day I drew this edgy little piece. There was minimal reasoning behind it. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I was drawing related to some sort of super team. My parents were in the graphic novel industry, so when your dad is up in his studio coloring Superman, you kind of want to color Superman too. I just loved creating out there fashions and drawing my characters with brightly colored, interestingly styled hair, something I would go on to mimic in my own style. Looking at this piece, I think I had some sort of initial idea about these characters going through portals to fight evil creatures, and I titled it Dreamgate. Here's where there's a bit of a disconnect for me. I'm not sure when the connection happened, when this drawing went from random superpowered trio to the novel Dreamgate. But that is what happened. Soon I found myself writing the story of 3 teenagers, all from very different parts of the world, getting drawn into a strange fantasy realm that they would have to come together to protect. In preparing for this video, I did some hunting through old drives just to see if I could find as early an iteration of this novel as possible. What I dug up was, I think, from 2007. I had to hunt down a way to get AppleWorks and open a CWK file, if anyone even knows what that is anymore. But once I had figured it all out, oh my god, I was looking at this ancient story, ancient as far as computers go, and somehow the embedded images that I'd dragged into the file were still in there and everything, which I didn't expect. So it was kind of a cool thing to look back on, also cringy, but to be expected. So, one of the things that I hope to do in this series is show writers who have been working on something on and off forever and who maybe feel stuck in that mire of is it ever going to be completed, or is it in this state and I can't ever break free from this state? Well, I want to show you that you can break free, that this is not necessarily a bad thing, that your work is evolving, that maybe the time for this piece to really come to fruition just hasn't hit yet. And one day it will. One day you can complete that mega project if you think it deserves to be completed. Let me read a bit of how Synterra, or Dreamgate, at the time started, and I'm gonna critique as I go, so let's see if you agree with me. Chapter 1. Rain Again. Kira stared out of her bedroom window. The vast moors looked even more desolate than usual today. Only a month ago they had moved to Ireland, the ancient home of her family, and Kira was even more homesick than usual today. Sitting on her window seat staring at the grey moors being pelted with cold rain, reminiscing about London, it seemed so far away. Really, with having been born in London, she knew she ought to be used to the rain, but it was different here. So very different. She thought to herself, of course I live here. It only suits the name I was given. Kira Ardara. Kira means little dark one. How lovely. Thanks, Mum. And Ardara means fort on the hill. The Ardara family had lived on a hill ever since the beginning and up to this day. There was Kira, probably the 13th generation since the beginning, and here she was, staring out a stained glass window down to the village below, above which their great stone house seemed so high. So when I was younger, I really wanted to get every little point and detail across, which I still do, but I've learned how to do that in a bit more of a eloquent way. I hope, anyhow. I think it's kind of a feature of youth, that urgency to be perfectly understood. The errors in these first couple paragraphs are kind of along the lines of telling, not showing. And I say along the lines of because you can't show the definition of a name per se, but there are better ways to express it that are less heavy-handed. As you'll learn, I'm really character focused, and in the past, I was just very anxious to get all the details that I had come up with across ASAP, rather than doling them out bit by bit, as one should. Moving on. Children, come downstairs. Breakfast is ready and on the table. Kira heard her little brother and sister rush down, making a horrible racket. At age 15, Kira was the eldest of 5 children. Next came Ailish, who was 10. Her name meant noble and kind. Then there were the twins, Kate, pure, and Kellen, the only boy, powerful. They were 8. Last, there was 1-year-old Kara, whose name meant sweet melody, although when she cried, it was anything but sweet. Alas, that was Kira's family, and she had to live with it for at least 3 more years. Kellen's annoying little blonde head popped into her doorway, and immediately his small pouting mouth opened in squeals that yelped, "Kira, get down here, Mum will be so sore." Kira shoved him out, saying very curtly, "I'm coming, Kellen, you little twerp." Uh-oh, the mouth opened yet again to say a familiar phrase in the Ardara household. "I'm telling Mum." Then came the typical reply, "Go ahead, see if I care." Good Lord. This is just so clumsy. And again, with the insistence on providing the meanings of names. You could tell that I had recently come across babynames.com and I was very proud of it. I also was really experimenting with descriptions at this time in my life, and that one of Kellen just does not do it. There's an image there, certainly, but a cartoonish and unrealistic one. Next. Kellen lived up to his name. He was very powerful, not strength or brain-wise, but that little mouth of his could get him anywhere, especially with his mum. He was her sweet little boy, her one and only, and her pudding. In all actuality, he hated these names because he was 8 years old, but when around his doting mother, he loved them. The truth was that if Kellen told, then it did matter. When it was said that they didn't care, that was a lie. With Kellen on your case, it was at least a week grounded, and around that place, all the children wanted to be able to go out and get away from the decrepit old castle. Why would kids want to escape a castle? Also, at the end of this whole excerpt I'm going to read, I dropped the fact that they live in a castle as if I didn't mention it right here. Of course, at this point, Kira rushed past Kellen down the stairs to prove that she was not late for breakfast. Ailish thought she was boss of the world. When Kira came down, the little rosy-cheeked girl with her flaming red hair looked her up and down and nodded, satisfied. Kira was the only one in her family without flaming red or honey blonde hair. She had light brown hair. She didn't know where exactly she got it from because her mother had blonde hair and so did her father. Of course, the red hair on Ailish and Kara was no surprise because of their heritage. But how Kira ended up with light brown hair was a mystery. This is why Kira had gone and dyed her hair green and pink. To stand out, to look different, but most of all, to fit in with her family. Heavy-handed way of getting Kira to have dyed hair. Makes no sense at all. I had things I wanted to include before I wrote this that were just purely appearance-based, and I was not about to take the time to include them properly. Kate. Kate was a different matter altogether. Kate stumbled down the stairs 10 minutes after everyone every morning. Her blonde hair hung sloppily about her thin face as she rubbed her eyes and flopped onto a green stool at their kitchen table. Kate was a quiet girl who hadn't talked till she was 5. It was a great deal of trouble, and she now had a bit of a speech impediment. It didn't show much now, but it had been atrocious when she was 6. One morning, on the way to school, an old lady came up to her and said, "Aw, what a sweet little girl. How old are you, my dear?" Kate had glared and said, "Thix. I'm Thix, and my mum said that nobody can understand me at all." Mrs. Ardara was very embarrassed, and the old lady stood up from where she had been stooping to Kate's eye level, and with a snort stomped off, mentioning something about child abuse. Yes, that Kate was a very different sort. But Kira herself could identify with the small, fair girl in her huge glasses. They were both unique and cast off and away from everyone else in their grade. Quickly finishing her waffles, Kira shoved her stool away from the small white table with its chipped paint and added her dish to a large pile in the rusted sink. Their home may be quaint, but it was no cheap cottage. Their house was a castle. I hate this segment so much, and I really don't know what I was thinking here with the thing. It makes no sense. I do know that I wanted Kate to have an impediment, though, because later on when she's speaking with the Fae, she loses it. So that's all, like, for the sake of that element. Anyhow, I think that's all you need to get an idea of this older version of the story. That's the intro. I may bring up other points as we go along in this series where it's pertinent, because I'm sure there's some funny stuff in there and like some really good lessons. But I just wanted to do a direct intro comparison for this first video. A good takeaway? I have packed a lot of stuff into these opening pages. All of the information there could be used in the future well, but the way it's been put across here, I'd say it's 90% unnecessary. These are only the first 2 pages of the book. Too much, Holly. So moving on from this, I'm going to read you the updated intro. Here we go. A golden purple sun rose over the horizon as 5 a.m. dawned on the London street where Kira Ardara lived. Having been up hours already, her family of 6 was finishing loading the last of their belongings into a large truck and locking the door to the brick-walled walk-up which they could no longer call their own. Turning their gaze towards the warming sky, there was an air of excitement and apprehension as they stood on the precipice of a new life. At 11 hours, the trip to Ireland was not terribly short, but not terribly long either. For most members of the Ardara family, the route as well as the destination were seen as a great adventure. Kira, however, was an outsider among her kin. She stood, physically and mentally clenched, in a rigid state as if in preparation for war. While her siblings were young enough to lack the same concern, Kira felt she had been forced to leave her friends behind, moving on to a whole new world she had no understanding of. This new world centered around an ancestral fort, and while the destination was not so distant from her current home, it was as foreign as anything could have been to her, a 19-year-old girl who had never left London. "Mom!" A muffled shriek sounded from the back of the small blue car parked in front of their moving truck. Kira, standing on the sidewalk with a large coffee recently procured from the corner store, raised an eyebrow and looked back over her shoulder as the shriek sounded again. It was much too early for this. Bridie rushed to her son's rescue, opening the child-locked door, allowing for Kellen to come pouring out, 70 pounds of energy contained in the form of a shockingly blonde 10-year-old boy. "Mom, I forgot my football in the yard. I just know I did. Can I go back, please?" Bridie sighed and nodded as Kellen ran back to their home and through the gate, followed by his long-suffering father, Adu. An easygoing musician whose energy contrasted with his wife's more organized nature, Adu had an uncanny talent for determining when Kellen-related emergencies were best handled by him, giving Bridie a moment of reprieve. "Kira, you did the last check of their bedrooms, right?" Bridie turned her attention back to her to-do list. "The twins, Ailish, mine, empty as can be," Kira replied robotically. Bridie's brow unfurrowed a little as she confirmed in her airy voice, "Good," and got in the car. Soon, Kellen returned, juggling the football on his way down the front garden path. "Why don't you get in the car with your mum, Kira? Kellen's gonna ride with his dad in the moving truck, right, Kellen?" Adu had clearly made judgment of Kellen's energy for the day and decided that his son would not do well packed into a small vehicle with his siblings and mother. Kellen nodded, beaming. Perturbed but unsurprised, Kira decided it was also too early for arguing, simply nodded and got in the passenger side seat beside her mother as she watched Adu and Kellen get into the truck through the rearview mirror. If nothing else, her little brother was incredibly skilled at getting either of his parents to do as he wished, sometimes even making them think it was their idea in the first place. Kira knew better. Adu's decision really had been Kellen's. Alright, so you have probably caught the differences in that without me even saying anything. Way less information, but the connection you make with these characters is far more real. You don't get to meet every member of the family in the first 2 pages, but there's nothing wrong with that. My aim, and hopefully I accomplished this, was to make each sentence necessary. Where I say that like 90% of that original intro was unnecessary, I wanted these to be necessary. Each sentence, especially right at the beginning of your book, should paint the scene and the characters and begin to usher you into their world. That less is more cliché, often true. I could go on for ages comparing my old writing to my new and beating myself up about it, but I think this has given you a good enough starter to see what happens when you work on something for a couple decades. And I'll just add, it's a bit scary to reveal this because I'm thinking, oh, has it really changed that much? But it's so hard to tell with your own work. I think it's changed, but 2 decades worth? I don't know. I do know that this copy was probably more like 1 decade ago, but still, I'm second guessing a lot. Yay! For those of you who are more seasoned writers, this sort of comparison won't really be anything groundbreaking, but I hope it's been helpful to some. And for those of you looking for more in-depth character and world building, just you wait, it's coming. Thanks for joining me for the first part of this new series. I'm having a lot of fun filming it, even though parts are harrowing, and I hope that you're having a lot of fun watching it. You know, I felt it was time to just get a bit more personal with the creativity that I'm putting forward on this channel and show you more of what I'm actively working on, other than just, generalizations about writing. So that's exactly what we're doing. The next episode will be out next week. But until then, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think of the series so far, about my, terrible writing, that sort of thing. And of course, I hope that you are having a day that is just as wonderful as you are. Bye.